Hey guys, this is going to be my pregnancy journey story, and I must warn you, if you're like really freaked out about pregnancy loss, don't watch this. This is going to be a two-part video. This part's going to be my first two pregnancies, and the next part is going to be about Molly. So, we got to start all the way back in March of 2012, which was almost 2 years ago. That's when I had a period, and I know right now it sounds like what, but trust me, it matters. So I had a period at the end of March 2012. And then I had gotten engaged to my husband on Christmas before that, 2011. And I will start by saying I'm not regular. I've never been regular. I don't think I have PCOS, and I've never been like formally tested for it, but my midwife seems to think I might have it. I don't have any like the big symptoms, like I don't have obesity, I don't have acne, I don't have any of that. So, like the only symptom of PCOS I really have is an irregular periods. I don't think I have it. Especially because, spoiler, I got pregnant 3 times in 7 months. So I don't think I have PCOS. But anyway, I have a really irregular period. But it's been about every 2 months, like 10 weeks or so over the past like couple years. So anyway, March 2012, I had my period. And then I got married June 2nd, 2012. And I was really worried that I was going to be on my period on my honeymoon, and thankfully I wasn't. I was kind of hoping it would come the week before, and it never came. And my wedding is important because I waited until I was married to have sex. So basically, I started trying to conceive on June 2nd, 2012. And I was like, I wanted a baby like yesterday. I was like so obsessed with like getting pregnant. I wanted a baby. I had baby fever so bad. I was so ready. My husband was not as keen on having a baby right away as I was. I was like totally convinced I was gonna have a baby right away. So I was like, I'm not gonna get a job because I'm just gonna have to quit, take care of my baby, which didn't happen. I did end up getting a job even before that, but so we're on our honeymoon, and I'm just like, my period's not here. Like, it's still not here. It's been like 2 months and a little bit. So where is it? And so I was like freaking out, like, and my period never came. So we had our honeymoon, you know, trying to conceive, all that, or I was trying to conceive. Did all that, and I was still expecting to have a period in like June, July. It like never came. I peed on so many sticks. I like was so obsessed. I was like, oh, I felt an implant move, you know, like, cause I don't know. So I took a bunch of pregnancy tests. They were all negative, and then like my period was still not there by like the end of June, beginning of July. So at that point, I decided I was going to take a pregnancy test on the first of every month until I either had my period or it was positive. So, long story short, it was July. I started having a couple dreams that I was, you know, like had kids or whatever. I don't know, and I don't remember exactly all the details. It was a long time ago, and I've kind of blocked it out, but I'll do my best. So I went in for a job interview because I was so bored just like hanging out at home. I was like, I'll get a job anyway, I'll make some money. So I got interviewed for a job on like July 25th of 2012. I'm really good with dates, so that's why I remember the dates. And I got hired, and the next day, or no, that day, like I had to take a drug test, which is weird. Like, I don't know why like the company I work for requires a drug test, but it doesn't matter for me because I've never done anything. So I took a drug test, and all I could think of was like, I wonder if I do pregnancy tests because like I really think I'm pregnant. And the next day, I couldn't wait till August 1st, of course. And so I was just like, so I took a pregnancy test, and it was positive, and I cried. I was so ecstatic. I was like, oh my gosh, I cannot believe I'm already pregnant. Like, I told you I was going to be pregnant, like, so soon after we got married. And my husband was not so excited. He did not want to have a kid before our first anniversary. But, you know, he was just like, oh yeah, that's nice. I mean, he was excited, but not as excited as I was. I was like crying because I was so excited. And so I immediately called my general doctor, and I had no idea how far along I was because keep in mind, by this point, I hadn't had a period in like 3 months. Let's see. No, 4 months. It had been 4 months since I had a period, and I found out I was pregnant. So I had no clue, and I was no way I was 4 months along because I had only been trying to conceive since June 2nd, because that's when I got married, that's when I had sex for the first time, that's when I turned in my V card, all that. So I'd never had sex before that, so there's no way I could be pregnant in March. So, July 26th, 2012, found out I was pregnant. I was so happy. I was elated, everything. Like, made all these plans, like, oh my gosh, like, what's baby's name gonna be? If it's a girl, her name's gonna be Molly for sure, all this. So, yeah, so I called my general doctor, I made an appointment, went in, and she was like, well, I don't do OB care, so I'll refer you to somebody. And I was like, okay. And she's like, we're gonna schedule an ultrasound for, like, the second week of August to make sure you're far enough along. And I was like, oh my gosh, are you serious? Like, that's so far from now. And so, shortly, I don't remember what day that was. I definitely blocked that out. I just remember it was at like 7 or 8 in the morning. It was really early in the morning, so I was really tired. I had to go. It was pretty close to my house, or I mean, my parents' house, it's my house now. This house. They referred me to an imaging center for a dating ultrasound, and since I had no idea how far along I was, and since I was probably pretty early, they just went ahead and did like a transvaginal. They didn't even do like a above ultrasound. They went right in me. And so a couple days before that, I started kind of cramping and I started spotting, and I was like, oh cool, it's like implant bleeding. Like, I didn't know, and I wasn't that worried about it because I knew that bleeding is a little bit normal. But by the day of my ultrasound, I was bleeding a little more, and I was starting to get kind of worried. And I'd heard from some people that they do like have a period when they're pregnant, so I was like, oh, maybe that's what it is. Maybe a period's here. I don't know. So I went to the ultrasound, and they put the, what's it called, the wand, whatever it is, up in my vagina, and there was a sac, and there was a little like baby, but I was so early. They only measured me to be like 5.5 weeks pregnant, and so it didn't have a heartbeat. Like, it wouldn't have a heartbeat for another week. And like, when I was going to that appointment, I was bleeding, and it was starting to be like more than just a little spotting, and so I was really worried that I was gonna get blood on the wand and stuff. So I made sure to like wipe really good, and I was just like, okay, whatever. Like, I had no idea. So I had that done. I was there for a long time. They took a ton of pictures of like my uterus, my ovaries, and everything, and they took a bunch of pictures of the sac, and they measured it, and I was like 5.5 weeks along. And then literally the next day, I wake up and I am like heavily bleeding. Like, go to the bathroom and there's a trail of blood like in the toilet from my privates. And so I'm just like, oh my gosh, I need to call my doctor. And so I called them, and I was like, look, I'm like 5.5 weeks pregnant, and I am like bleeding really heavily right now, and I'm like kind of cramping. So I just want to make sure everything's okay. So can I come in for a blood test? They said yes. So I came in for a blood test. They drew some blood, and of course, like, it would be like a week before they would find out if anything was wrong. So that whole week, I was bleeding heavily. Like, I had my period, and I was just like, oh, this is what people say when they're like, oh, I'm on my period, like when I'm pregnant. And I was really worried. I was like, maybe I'm miscarrying, but I don't think so. I hope not, because I like totally knew I was gonna have this baby right away. And so a week goes by, and I have to go in for another blood draw. And of course, the first blood draw, I was obviously still pregnant because my HCG was there and everything. So I went in a week later, had my blood drawn again, and the next day I got the results. And they called me, and they said, your HCG is dropping. You are losing this pregnancy. And my heart just broke. Like, my world just shattered. I was just, like, devastated. I was so upset. And, I hated myself. I'm gonna cry. So is Molly. Oh, come here. So, I was really upset. I hated my body. I wanted to inflict as much harm that was invisible as I could on my body. Yes, I do admit that. But above all, I was just like, dang it, I'm gonna freaking keep trying to have this kid. Oh, don't cry. Obviously, I have a kid now. A week later, I had my blood drawn a third time to make sure it was like almost back to normal. So that pregnancy failed like before even 6 weeks, and it was probably because I hadn't had a period in 4 months. So I figured it was a one-time thing. So I was like, alright, got that out of the way now. And I was really depressed, of course. But I, like, kept trying. And so, like, the next couple months went on. I started my job, like, while I was still bleeding from this. It sucked so bad. I was like, oh, it was awful. I bled for about 3 weeks. It was like a period, but it lasted like 3 weeks, so that's what it feels like. It didn't hurt. It wasn't painful. I didn't have, like, really bad cramps when it was, like, flushing everything out because I was so early. There was, like, really nothing there. So then I kept, trying to conceive because I was like, screw that, I'm not gonna let that stop me. And so I kept trying, and I didn't have a period again. And so I was like, okay, I'm not having a period. And so, like, by the time November came, I still hadn't had a period, like, after I had stopped bleeding from losing my first pregnancy. So I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on, but I'm definitely going to keep trying. And I kind of, around that time, started to feel like I might be pregnant again. I don't know. In the middle of November, I got really sick. I got a cold. I normally get colds really fast. It lasted 10 days. I lost my voice for about 5. I had to take work off. And, like, it was just awful. Like, I had the worst cold, like, laryngitis, whatever. And I was like, the fact this cold is lasting so long, I think I might be pregnant because it'll lower my immune system. So, on Thanksgiving morning, I had Thanksgiving off because it was my day off of work, and my husband was working, so he wasn't around. I came here to this house, and just out of nowhere, I was like, Mom, I want to take a pregnancy test. So I went to Walgreens, and I bought a 2-pack, and I came, and I peed on it, and it was positive again. So I was like, oh my gosh, it's positive. I can put all this behind me. I'm pregnant again. Woohoo, that's so awesome. I'm so fertile. I don't have to worry about fertility, blah, blah, blah. And of course I was really scared because I'd lost one. And so I was like, I am so determined not to lose this. Like, I will feel differently this time. And as the pregnancy progressed, like, I actually was really scared because I didn't have a single dream that I was pregnant. The dream that I did have that I was pregnant, it was of me losing it again, and so I was terrified, and I was just like, I felt like this total disconnect. Like, I did not feel pregnant, I did not feel like there was anything growing in me, I felt nothing, and I was just, like, really scared at, like, how empty I felt about this pregnancy, and how, like, I felt like something was wrong. Like, deep down, I knew something was wrong. And spoiler, yes, I did lose this one too. So, I felt like something was wrong. And I didn't make it far enough to see the OB that I was referred to. Like, we kept playing phone tag, and then I lost the pregnancy, so I just, like, never called back. I just, like, ignored the rest of her calls because I was so pissed off. So, when I got pregnant the second time, I called my general doctor again, but she kept getting sick, so she kept canceling on me. And so I was like, well, I guess I'll just refer myself to a doctor. And so the hospital that I have a loyalty to, just because, I went to them, like, I called their OB office, and I was just like, I need an OB. And they're like, oh, okay, do you want a midwife or a family practitioner? Or whatever it's called. The one that does OB care and is a family, like, pediatrician. And they didn't say anything about OB, so I was like, I'll take a midwife, just because I know what a midwife is, and I don't know what whatever else you said was. So, I made an appointment, and they're like, who do you want to see? I was like, I don't know, who's open? And they said some name. It was a really unique name I never heard before, and of course I forgot it. And I also started bawling when I called them to make the appointment. And so That was really embarrassing. I'm just like, "Ah, hi, this is my name and my address and my insurance." So that was really embarrassing. But I cried because I was just like so happy I like had made it that far again, even though by that point I was also really scared. I was just like, they're like, oh, why are you crying? I'm like, I'm so scared. And so I went to see this midwife. Like they scheduled me for like a month. They're like, when's your last period? I was like, I didn't have one. Like I had a miscarriage and I got pregnant right after that, and I have no idea because my period isn't regular. So it was like 2 months ago. So who knows how far along I am? But if it's showing on the stick, I'm at least like 3 weeks, right? So, um, sorry, I have a cold right now. Um, so my appointment was for December 21st, 2012, like the end of the world day, which was kind of foreboding. So even though like I knew the world wasn't gonna end, just like I felt like bad about it anyway. So I like had to force myself to like be excited about this pregnancy. I just like felt nothing. I just felt like there was something wrong. So I see the midwife, and she's like the coolest person ever. She was really nice, and I liked her, so I kept going to her. And at that office, they have like these little ultrasound machines in the rooms that are like really informal. They're a lot better than they were like 20 years ago, but it's not. She doesn't like measure a date or anything. So she just like put it on my chest or on my stomach. She's just like, let's see, let's take a peek at your baby. And so she puts it on, and I definitely had a baby in there. And she's like, yeah, it looks to be about like 6 or 7 weeks. It was just like a blob, and she couldn't find a heartbeat. She was just like, I don't see the heartbeat, but it's moving, so it's okay. And like for some reason, I just felt so just like awful feeling when I like saw it. I thought when I saw it, I would finally like relax, but I didn't relax. I was just like worse, and I was like, what is wrong with me? Why am I so scared? Like it's right there, and I had to make myself be excited to see it. I just like was like, what? Okay. So she never saw a heartbeat. I don't even know if it had a heartbeat or not, but she said she saw it move. So she's like, "Well, I'm not worried about it because I saw it move. So we'll assume that its heartbeat's there, and I'll schedule you in like a week or two for like a dating ultrasound." So she went ahead and like called that in, and then she did a big pelvic exam, and I started spotting from that just because pelvic exams, like if they push on your uterus or on your cervix, it'll bleed a little bit, so you spot a little. And so that happened, so I freaked out because, last time blood meant I was losing the baby, so I was like, oh my gosh. And it kept coming, like, it didn't stop. And so I was like, oh my gosh. And it was like a Friday, I think. And then, like, I forgot, or like they forgot to give me the flu shot. And like, I didn't want it, but I didn't really know how to say no. And so they had me come back on Monday to take the flu shot. So I did. And when I was there, I asked the nurse, I was like, is it normal to like keep bleeding from this? And she's like, oh yeah, give it a week and then come in if it's still bleeding. And I was like, okay. And it kept bleeding, it didn't stop. And I was like starting to really freak out because last time this led to my pregnancy loss. And so I was like terrified. And very clearly I remember it was like, was it Thursday? It was like, I'm pretty sure it was Thursday. So like the next Thursday was like right after Christmas. Um, like I kept spotting. I thought there was something wrong with my cervix. Like whenever I stood up, I would bleed a little, so I thought it was my cervix. But it was like older blood, so I wasn't like that concerned. But then on like the next Thursday was like the 27th of December, I think. Um, I went to the bathroom at work and it was red blood, like it smelled like period blood, and I was like, holy expletive. And so I went into the break room and I had told everyone I was pregnant. I was like, I'm pregnant. And then I was like, my supervisor, who's this 60-year-old lady who's really awesome, was like really worried. I was like, I'm like terrified right now that something's wrong. And then I was like, I'm bleeding. I need to call my mom. So I called my mom and I was like, Mom, I want to go to the ER like right now. Because the only reason I went to the ER is because I wanted an ultrasound, but the clinic was closed because it was like 7. So I took an early out from work and I drove myself to my parents' house, which is this house, and my mom took me to the ER. And that's the first time I've ever been to the ER. And so I get there, I'm just like, hi, I'm here just because it's after hours, and that's what they would tell me to do anyway. Like, I don't want to wait till tomorrow because I have work and all this stuff. So, um, and I got taken back pretty quickly. I sat in a room for a long time, and then finally, I was like, I just want like a pelvic exam. I want to make sure my cervix is okay, because I still thought my cervix was just bleeding. I was like totally in denial, but I was pretty sure that I had lost the pregnancy, and I was really pissed off. And so, the doctor was like, well, we don't really think we'll do an ultrasound because it could still be alive, but that doesn't mean it won't like die later. And I was like, I understand. And then they decided to do an ultrasound anyway. And so they rolled me down the hall to radiology, and we get there, and they put the thing on my tummy, and she starts looking around. I look at the screen, and I like see the baby on the screen, and she's like looking at it. And then I prayed that like it would be okay, and I felt worse, and I was like, why am I feeling worse? I am so confused. Like, I was so upset that I was like feeling so awful about this pregnancy. And by then I'd had morning sickness, so it was definitely there. And so I was just like, what is going on? Why do I feel so bad about this? And then she turned the screen like away from me, and I didn't think anything of it, but it was because there was no heartbeat. So she spent a long time like with like a furrowed brow, like, and she had the wand and she's like moving it around, and she took a ton of measurements, and then she's like, I want to do a transvaginal. I was like, okay. So she's like, the way I do it is I have you hold it and you insert it. And I was like, oh, okay. So I put it in, and she's looking around with that, and I'm just sitting there like I still have no idea there's nothing wrong. They didn't tell me right then there was nothing wrong, because I guess what they do is they look for a long time to see if they can find a heartbeat. And she looked for like 30 minutes to find a heartbeat, and she never found one. So I get back to where my mom has been sitting for like an hour. I'm like, sorry, Mom. We were there for a long time. And so we get back, and then they like hand me this paper, and they're like, we're diagnosing you with a spontaneous abortion, which is like the medical term for a miscarriage. And I was like, oh, so I am miscarrying? Like, I had no idea. And then like all of a sudden the doctor walked in, he's like, there was no heartbeat. And I was like, oh, okay. And I was really sad, but like at the same time I was really relieved, because I knew deep inside there was something wrong. And so then I had to call my husband and say, yeah, the baby's dead. There's nothing. I just lost my second pregnancy in a row, and I was so upset. Like, I was so disgusted with my body that it just like couldn't handle it. I wanted a baby so bad, and it was like second time that just nope, just kidding. And I was mostly pissed that I had to start from square one. And at like right when it happened, since like the first stage of grief is like denial, so I was like, oh, I'm totally fine, like I'm cool with this, I'll just move on. But that's not exactly how it happened. I was doing well, like coping, and then like the end of January, like a month later, my cat died. And I was very attached to my cat because I'd had her for half my life, and so that really effed me up, and I was so just like depressed and angry at my body, and I was just like, I hate everyone and everything. And to make matters worse, like 5 of my Facebook friends got pregnant with their due date around April, May, which is when my first pregnancy was. I had a due date of like April 14th or something, and like 5 people I knew got pregnant like right then, and their babies were all due at that time. So I was really upset. And then like because I was living in an apartment, the ward that I went to at church was filled with young families, and so like half of the ladies in the ward were pregnant, and so I was so upset. I hated going to church. Like, I'd cry, and it just sucked so bad. It was just like the worst experience ever, and I was just like, it really, really tried my faith. Like, I kept my faith, but I was just like, I have no trust in God anymore, because he said I was gonna have a baby, and then he said, just kidding, and I was really pissed. So now it's 2013, and I'm bleeding, and it was really painful because I was further along, and so I had some really bad cramps. It didn't last all that long. I didn't need any medicine, but oh my gosh, it was just ridiculous. And then I had to like like the imaging place calls, like, we remind you of your appointment, and I was like, oh, it doesn't even matter, I lost it, so who cares, you know, and all that, and I had to go like the follow up appointment with my midwife. So I did that. I was like, yeah, it's gone. And so she did like a like really thorough exam and stuff, and then we did blood work, and my HCG was dropping, of course, but my HCG wasn't dropping fast enough. Like it was going down, but it was still like pretty high, and so every week I had to give blood. I had to drive 15 minutes down there and give blood to see how it was dropping. So it did drop every time, but it was still like not dropping fast enough. And so by the time February comes around, they decide they're going to do like a really in-depth like pelvic ultrasound to see if there's anything left that was keeping my HCG from dropping. And so that happened the end of February, and then I stopped bleeding like the end of January finally. So February comes, and I'm just like, this sucks. Like, I decided to look for houses instead of like keep the apartment, and then we ended up buying my parents' house. So we own this house, and my parents moved across town, so they're closer to their work. So that's really awesome. We ended up buying a 4-bedroom home that we will grow into. I mean, this little one will help us grow into it. So so it's like February 21st, so a couple months later. I'm at work, and all of a sudden I feel something between my legs, and I'm like, I think that's more than just, you know, normal vag droppings. Oh, don't fuss now. Here. So I go to the bathroom, and there's blood. I'm like, oh my gosh, I started my period. My midwife told me to try to have a period before I try to conceive again, because she said sometimes people lose pregnancies if they're too close together, which made sense, and I don't know if that's why or not. Like, I honestly believe it's because it just had a genetic problem, and it just, you know, that's what I honestly think happened, is that it had something wrong genetically, and it just, you know, was like, oh, we're just gonna boot it now. So I started my period, and I started my period like when I had this ultrasound. And so I get there, it's like the end of February. They had this ultrasound just to make sure everything was cleared out. And so I get the poor tech. I'm just like, yeah, sorry that I'm bleeding. She's like, have you had any bleeding? I'm like, yeah, I'm actually on my period right now, so there will be blood, so don't freak out. And so I had to drink like all the water, and she did like on top, and she didn't see anything, and then she did a transvaginal as well, and she didn't see anything, or she didn't tell me anything. There was nothing there. Like, I saw the screen, I was like, okay, there's nothing there that I can see. And so she took all these pictures and gave them to my midwife, and then like the results were of course inconclusive because there was nothing there. By then there was nothing there because I was on my period. So March rolls around. March 8th, I had my last draw finally. So I had my blood drawn. My HCG was finally negative. She didn't say 0, she said negative. And so I didn't need a DNC or whatever it is where they go in and like scrape the wall of your uterus just to clean everything out. I didn't need that. And everything was good. Like around that time I actually was kind of like, what if I'm like pregnant and like my HCG goes up, like what are we gonna do? And it didn't happen. My HCG was negative. So I found that out on the 11th because it was a weekend, and so I was like, yay, I'm finally done with this stupid, like, coming here and giving blood. I'm finally done with this pregnancy loss. I can move on. And that's where I'm gonna stop this one, because that leads right into my pregnancy with Molly, which I'm going to talk about in part 2 of this video. So I'll see you there.